Kate Ryan. Mosner Michaela. I don't think so. Mosner Michaela.
My name is Mother Michaela. I'm from Holy Myrrh Bearers Monastery. We're the Orthodox Church of America. We have a small farm outside of Otigo. And I'm here because I am from Texas. I'm a New Yorker now, and I feel compelled to say that fracking and the ensuing pipelines and compressor stations are absolutely ruining Texas. They are ruining it. They are destroying it. Lamar County just recently won their suit against the gas and pipeline company because they were able to show absolutely that the construction of the pipeline had destroyed property and wildlife. Also, the noise and vibration from the compressor stations had caused health problems and adverse effects on wildlife and livestock as well. And the asthma rate for the children in one single county alone, because of the fracking and the pipelines and everything else, the asthma rate for those children is now twice that of the entire United States in one single county. Now, I come from an oil family. My uncle was an oil man, but he was a different type of oil man than this. It has been medically proven that the noise from compressor stations, which are necessary with a pipeline, the noise and vibrations cause thickening of the membrane surrounding the heart. They cause aneurysms, stroke, rupture of the blood vessels in the retina, and hearing loss. It also gives some people seizures, and it also affects wildlife and livestock the same way. At present, there is no existing technology to prevent these problems. So it's not an if, it's just when these problems occur. And it has been proven that this pipeline has a very poor record in their safety precautions. All the money in the world is not going to give you back your health. And even though I have been a nun for 50 years, I am quite well aware that greed is always the bottom line. I certainly hope it's not yours.
David Hutchison.
David Hutchison. I'm chair of the Environmental Board of the City of Oneonta, and I'm not speaking for the board, nor am I speaking for the City of Oneonta. A couple of quick comments that I'd like to get on the record. As you may know already, the M route for the pipeline is scheduled, I think it's been changed, don't know for sure, to go through the Rydell State Park. And there are two parts to the park. I mean, it's one park, but two parcels came together. The northern parcel was given by Patricia Rydell, given at no cost to the state of New York, 1,000 acres to keep in perpetuity. And that was the trust that she had. Hartwick College, upon the time when this was given to the state, Hartwick College in their environmental station had acreage that abutted, 800 acres that abutted the park. And that 800 acres the college has had for over 30 years, and the parcel has not been logged since the 1800s. So there's tree growth on that over 120 years. There is a bog at the top, glacial bog, shallow bog, with pitcher plants and sundew, rather rare plants that we find associated with bogs. If the line goes through, it would be about 600 feet swath through this area. It's been studied for over 30 years by Harvard students, Harvard faculty, visiting faculty. It still is being studied. It's the headwaters, one of the small streams is the headwaters, flows into the creek that goes into Susquehanna and then on down into the Chesapeake Bay. So it's really a critical area, and I assume you guys are not going to recommend, I don't know what your powers are, but I do not think Williams will put the pipeline through there. But it's just a desire that you really need not even think about it. Another quick comment. I hope that PERC will have a clear set of definitions, such as an open pipeline. I understand that it means either way. You can either tap onto the pipeline to get gas off for some of the communities that want it, or else you can put gas into it. And I think that needs to be clearly defined. I read somewhere that it means that. It has tremendous implications. I'm also a geologist, PhD in geology, taught for 32 years, and I really, as a geologist, hope that you guys, that ferc is not clouded over with all the grand and glorious estimates of gas in the Marcellus Shale and also recently in the Utica Shale. The USGS is a great institution, a fantastic scientific organization, but they don't deal with the economics of recovering that shale, the gas out of the shale. When the market is low, they're not going to get the gas out of there. So it seems to me that this economic concept that there's, this shale gas that has to be moved may be a bit fallacious. And I hope that that's weighed out in any decisions that FERC makes. Thank you.
Kathy McNulty. Kathy McNulty. Lynn Fisher, if you could come up also next.
Before you go, can I get a quick show of hands who else has signed up to speak but hasn't gone yet? Those of you who've signed up to speak but did not yet get to go, show of hands. Okay, so we've got about 20 minutes left. Just keep that in mind. We've still got 10 people. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Kathy McNulty. I live in Sydney Center, New York. Tonight I would like to submit a 68-page study of the Carrs Creek watershed. That was, I have a characterization report that citizens who live in my hamlet participated in making. I would like you to use this study, this report to study the increased risk of flooding in our watershed and in all other watersheds along the 120-mile route, both the A and M, caused by the clear cutting of trees over steep slopes and including the build out of gathering lines and access roads with a special emphasis on stream water quality, endangered species, and the loss of habitat, including the habitat for people. We have lived through 2 devastating floods in 2006 and 2011. We don't need anything to increase the risks of these floods in our areas. We also don't need another ecological disaster from industrial poisoning. In Sydney, we have 2 Superfund sites. In Sydney Center, there's 2 more in Sydney proper, caused by the dumping of chemicals by companies such as Amphenol, and in whose name the pipelines and fracking are now being called for, threatening their workers with the loss of their jobs if they don't bend to the will of the gas companies. So citizens are being threatened, towns are being bribed, including mine, by these same companies, Cabot Williams. This is corporate tyranny. I ask you, please do not facilitate it. Please do not participate in it. Thank you.
Lynn Fisher. Lynn Fisher. Carl Seeley. Richard Oglesby. Cunningham. Jeannie Bridger. Ed Zindate. Jennifer Stinson. Wayne Stinson. Keith Shue.
Good evening. My name is Keith Shue. I live in the town of Cherry Valley in Otsego County. The comments I submitted in writing relate to the cumulative adverse impacts which FERC must consider, resulting not only from the pipeline, but also from reasonably foreseeable outcomes. The Constitution Pipeline has been proposed to transport gas produced by fracking of shale in Pennsylvania. As it enters the state of New York, the pipeline passes first into Broome County and then into Chenango County, which both contain shale gas reserves comparable to those of Pennsylvania. These are two of the 5 counties which have been proposed for fracking first in New York State, if it is permitted. This is the so-called sacrifice zone areas. It is therefore reasonable to foresee that fracking will likely occur around the pipeline in Broome and Chenango counties, as it has in Pennsylvania if the pipeline is built. Therefore, those impacts must be evaluated as part of your review. Proceeding further north into Delaware, Otsego, and Schoharie counties, the composition of shale gas reserves are somewhat different. Nonetheless, we know that the proposed alignment corresponds to lands north of the New York City watershed with access to both the Marcellus and Utica formations. In particular, the path also corresponds roughly to a quote-unquote sweet spot in the Utica formation, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. Therefore, the potential impacts of fracking should be considered in these counties too. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has even said in their comments that the impacts of fracking in the surrounding area must be evaluated. So has Otsego 2000, a long-standing organization committed to protecting the environment, the rural heritage, and the history of this region. I stand by not only the people here, but also by the data of the U.S. Geological Survey, the official comments of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the official comments of Otsego 2000 in maintaining that the impacts of fracking cannot be ignored when you review this pipeline proposal. A comprehensive build-out analysis of fracking infrastructure should be performed as part of your assessment, and I will point out that the Nature Conservancy has actually performed a comprehensive type of build-out analysis of one county, Tioga County, and this is the type of thing that I would encourage you all to look at and to do for this project, looking at what those potential impacts of infrastructure, compressor stations, gathering lines, and so forth that could come with this pipeline. With respect to the applicant's claim that the capacity is already reserved, we know that capacity can be created by increasing compression or flow rate. Furthermore, once a new corridor is approved, it's very easy to add additional lines within the same easement to support future fracking, so we know this is a possibility. It is important to recognize that you are considering approval of not only a pipeline, but of an easement corridor, therefore the future foreseeable uses of that corridor must be considered too. And finally, I'd like to say something about economics. Yes, there may be an economic benefit to the Constitution Pipeline, but those are not lasting benefits that will be seen by the local community. They are instead benefits that will be seen by the executives of multinational corporations who are skilled at putting together Ponzi schemes, and by investment bankers who have insider knowledge of the boom and bust cycles which they help to orchestrate so that they can profit on the way up and on the way down by selling their own clients short. As we speak, the gas industry is rapidly seeking federal permits for liquefied natural gas export facilities so they can move their product offshore. And when that happens, our domestic gas glut will be gone and prices will rise again. This is simple economics 101. Therefore, the notion that's been said about cheap gas that will keep our children warm and lift us out of poverty, that's simply not true. What we are really seeing emerge here is a pattern of behavior that has repeated itself time and again, from the mountaintop removals in Appalachia to the diamond mines of Africa, where extractive industry comes in, depletes the resources of an area, water is polluted, the environment is ruined, people get sick, all for the purpose of growing an economy somewhere else. This pipeline is part of that equation. It is not about a significant public need in upstate New York or even in this country. Therefore, it is totally inappropriate to force anyone to participate in such an enterprise against their will. In order to use eminent domain to take private property, a bona fide public need must be established, and that simply hasn't been done here. Lastly, I'll say if this pipeline is truly about transporting gas, then it should be built within already existing pipeline corridors, instead of carving a new corridor through this new area, which could be exploited for gas development. Thank you.
Marion Carl.
I want to thank you for taking our comments even this late hour. My name is Marion Carl. I am a landowner in Middlefield, which is not at all close to the path of the pipeline, but many of us feel that whatever happens any place in Otsego County is going to affect all of us. So I would like to make 4 different points. At a scoping session held in Oneonta's Holiday Inn a month ago, a representative of the Williams Company stated, and I quote here, "There is no connection between this pipeline and the development of the fracking industry in this area." I believe this statement was repeated earlier in this hour, or in this session. But a memo sent to investors seems to say the opposite, and I quote here, "We're putting together an infrastructure that makes drilling in the Marcellus even more desirable." So I think it's very naive to say that there is no connection between the pipeline and fracking. 2, some individuals believe that Otsego County will not be a place where gas drilling will be profitable. That may indeed be true for the short term. However, the proposed path of the pipeline is right through the Marcellus Shale region of Otsego County. Logic says that an already constructed infrastructure would invite the exploitation of reserves geographically close to the pipeline, as the more accessible and profitable reserves are depleted. And most important to consider, additional lines can easily be installed within the same easement without further approval to provide plenty of new capacity for gas from fracking if it ever should be permitted. 3, I oppose this pipeline construction and related gas drilling because it has the potential to transform a rural and scenic upstate New York into an industrial landscape, ruining the land for agriculture, especially organically grown produce, forest products, and tourism, which have been the backbone of our economy for some time. This pipeline may well serve as a primary trunk for an industrial network of gas rigs, gathering lines, and compressor stations with a cumulative effect on the environment, air, earth, and water, as well as the health and safety of individuals and communities. All of this must be a part of your assessment process. Many people have stated that they do not believe that this pipeline is necessary. In the long view, it is going to be much easier for our children and grandchildren to decide to allow the construction of a pipeline later if it is absolutely necessary than it will be for them to try to recover the land you are asking us to surrender for development of a pipeline. I'm asking with all respect that plans for building the constitutional pipeline are not approved by FERC. Thank you.
Sheila Cohen. Sheila Cohen. Karen Backus. Lisa Barr.
If you haven't spoken yet, why don't you just come down to the front row?
I'm in the front row. Consider me in the front row. I have 1 minute, just 1 minute.
don't we just go right to left?
Nathaniel Posner. Well, most of the material I wanted to cover has been covered quite well. Something, you know, I appreciate the extension in time that you've given us, and I hate to appear to be looking a gift horse in the mouth, but a gentleman earlier spoke and mentioned that neighbors had come to let him know. So he got to see the maps outside for the very first time minutes before entering this room. He's not alone. My neighbor is on Southside Drive, just less than a quarter of a mile here, which is a very nice residential neighborhood, fairly well populated, and nobody knew that their houses were within a few hundred feet of the proposed pipeline, because they're not considered impacted landowners, because the pipeline doesn't go through their land. It goes through the land across the street. And no one was notified. I don't have a very well-prepared statement, largely because I spent the last 2 weeks trying to notify them for you, or for whoever should be responsible to do that. Right here in this city, if I want to put an additional parking spot on my property, all of my neighbors have to be notified. I have to come before a board and show that this is not going to be damaging in any way to anyone, and everyone is notified, and rightly so. But in this case, a 30-inch high-pressure pipeline can run across the street from 100 homes, and not one of them's been notified. And it becomes the responsibility of the few who happen to find out. I found out by accident. Two weeks is not enough time. And certainly a few minutes is no time. How do you know what the, you know, if you're depending on the citizens to supply information that's needed for an environmental review, what quality of information are you getting from somebody who hasn't had a chance to, didn't even know where the line was going, because somebody from the gas line, from the gas company, misinformed them? This whole thing, the whole thing is a bad idea from the get-go. And what's the environmental impact of pulling millions of gallons of water out of our rivers and lakes? How does that affect the life forms that live at that level, at the first couple of inches? There are plants that live in that zone only. There are animals that live in those areas only. How does that affect them? What is the environmental impact? This is an insane question. What's the environmental impact of pulling millions of gallons of perfectly good water out of the rivers and streams, and rivers and lakes, and contaminating them? Just from the very start, it's a bad idea. So we take the water, we take perfectly good water, and we contaminate that, and then we use that to contaminate the earth, which then develops into the contamination of the air, because as contrary to what a couple of people have said, it's not safe and it isn't clean. And if you're not aware, and I know everyone in this room is aware of Anthony and Graffia's work, and his associates at Cornell University, and if you're not looking at that, will provide you with very significant information. They have, yes, they have determined and this is amazing for me to think, but this is reported that, and there's a quote that downstream emissions, pipelines, equal or exceed the upstream emissions, the production and storage, suggesting that natural gas is a very poor choice from a poor energy choice from the standpoint of global warming, and on and on. But the fact is, according to scientists at Cornell, the gas lines, the pipelines, leak as much or more methane than the actual wells, which are horrific if you look at the studies. So that's it for me. Have a good night.
Hello, my name is Rachel Harrison Smith. I'm a student at Hartwick College, as are my peers with me. We're also residents at the Pine Lake Environmental Campus, which I don't know if you know what that is, but we live there. We still attend the college. It's college property, and it is not far at all from where the pipeline would be going or could be going. It is just down the road from us, and I personally disagree with it being put in. I don't think it's necessary. If we're saying that we need this gas, I don't think we really need it. Some people brought up tonight that it would save jobs for people, it would lower bills. Well, there are other ways to do that, renewable resources that we could be looking into and putting our investments and our time into, instead of sitting here fighting against having something that really isn't going to benefit us in the long run. We're still going to run out of this oil, and then what are we going to have this pipe sitting around for? It's going to be harmful. It's going to cost money to build, to maintain. It's going to destroy things. Instead of fighting nature to access the fuel that we want to use, we should be using the stuff we already have. You can walk outside and you have wind, water, you have the sun. You don't need to dig up the earth to put in a pipe to transfer gas when you have these resources at your fingertips.
Can you answer the names, please?
I'm Rachel Harrison Smith.
I'm Max Holden.
I'm Emily Lisborg.
And we're all students at Hartwick and all housed at Pine Lake Environmental Campus. I would like to bring up that alternate M. The route runs through the state park about a few thousand feet from where the students are housed and just a few hundred feet from where our wells are. It's also right in the middle of an amphibian migratory path, and that would certainly disrupt them. It's not ideal land. It's steep hills, rocky, and it floods a lot. I've personally seen the road underwater, which the pipeline will go under the road. So, we realize you may be getting pressure from all the sides, and it may be difficult to remove the plants at this point, but please do so. This pipeline models short-sighted, greedy behavior for my generation that will be stricken with environmental and energy crises. This is deprivation of my education when the pipeline goes in, and it is deprivation of my future. Thanks.
Just a little bit more about where exactly the pipeline will be going. It's going through Rydell State Park on the upper tract. As the previous speaker stated, this forest is undisturbed, and it has been undisturbed for nearly 120 years. It is pristine forest. It contains sphagnum bog, which the rarest salamander in North America. It's a four-toed salamander, and they live only in sphagnum bogs. They're extremely rare habitats, and they're contained in Rydell State Park and have been isolated for an extremely long time. And putting this pipeline in would disrupt the integrity of their habitat, unquestionably. We also have a pair of bald eagles. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. They live on our island. The pipeline, the alternate M, if it would go through Pine Lake, if it would go through Rydell State Park, the blasting, the 600 feet that have been allowed with implementation of this pipeline, we're not even allowed to take boats out when the eagles are at the lake. I can't even imagine what blasting would do. It would really, really disrupt them. it's an environmental campus. Putting in a pipeline, it would deter students from coming to live at the lake. It would deter potential students who are coming with the motivation of living at an environmental campus. This goes against the purpose of Pine Lake. We're a sustainable campus. We try to be in any way that we can, and having a pipeline and an environmental campus does not make sense. So that's, yeah.
My name is Brian Hagenbach. I'm an Oneonta citizen, and I am opposed to the pipeline, and I think I'm going to clarify some earlier points, and I've got some new information for you tonight. I have my PhD in environmental studies. I'm trained as a conservation biologist, and I focus my research on disturbances in forest ecosystems, both human and natural disturbances. I'm employed by Hartwick College, although the comments tonight are my own. I'm the director of the Pine Lake Environmental Campus, and I am really proud of my students who are there. Pine Lake is 125 acres. It is located around Davenport in Delaware County. Tonight, many of the people in this audience have lived at Pine Lake. Many of the local community members learned to swim or fish at Pine Lake. It is a major recreation area for citizens of this area. In 2008, Hartwick College sold 840 acres of our upper tract to the state as an addition to Robert V. Riddell State Park. The upper tract is collaboratively managed between state parks and Hartwick College, and the upper tract is managed according to the Pine Lake land use policy. The land use policy says that the upper tract is managed as an ecological reserve for research, nature study, and recreation. Motor vehicles are prohibited. This project will violate our land use policy. It's my responsibility to uphold our land use policy. It's interesting that the Route M is going to go through 3 different state parks, including Riddell, and I thought that state parks were owned and operated by the public for the public good and not as a sacrifice zone for private gain. As my students said, the pipelines are going to come within a few hundred yards of our western border, which is a buttonbush swamp. It's got an active bald eagle's nest. The pipeline will also cross the upper tract and cross Riddell State Park in 3 locations. It will bisect our upper tract about a quarter mile from where our student residences are. I've got 40 students and staff that live at Pine Lake. I've got 3,000 to 4,000 visitors per year who come out, hike, fish, swim, and relax. Their health and their safety is my job. It is my responsibility. My job is also to offer Pine Lake as an educational resource for our students, faculty, staff, and the community. We are a learning and living and learning laboratory for sustainability. For more than 40 years, our faculty and staff have been studying the upper tract forest ecosystem. We have established several permanent undisturbed research plots where we are studying how forests change over time. We're looking at the impact of climate change, atmospheric deposition, invasive species in these ecosystems. The negative impacts of the pipeline on Riddell State Park and Hartwick College students are enormous. The upper tract is part of a contiguous forest. It's one of the largest undisturbed forests, largest roadless forests outside of the Catskills and the Adirondacks. Between Route 58 and Webb Hill Road, it's about 7 miles, and it is roadless. It goes on the north and south slopes of the hill. If you are going to put this pipeline through the area, it's going to cut about 10,000 acres of roadless core habitat in half. That means fragmentation. Our studies this summer revealed that our upper tract is now classified as an invasive-free forest. There's no invasive species there because we've had no disturbances. Yet, if you open it up to a pipeline, invasive species like barberry will bring in ticks, it will bring in Lyme disease, cowbirds, which will displace native bird species. Motor vehicles will have access to it. So we are fundamentally altering one of the largest forest systems in New York State outside of the Catskills and the Adirondacks. My colleagues have talked about destroying the salamander populations. Hartwick College is known for its research on salamanders and frog. We did some of the breaking research on frog deformities, and we're using salamanders now to look at regenerative tissues of hearts and the lungs of salamanders. Where do we get them? We get them at Pine Lake when they migrate across the road in the spring. Okay. About 30% of our bio department's students' theses are linked to Pine Lake research. So this will impact our ability to train the next generation of students, researchers, planners, and ecologically literate students. It will end research on at least one of our permanent research plots. I looked at the map. It goes right through our Deep Woods research plot we've been studying for over 20 years. The blasting will threaten the structural stability of our earthen straw bale house and cob house, which were designed and built by Hartwick students and are now residences. In fact, Emily lives in the cob house. It will threaten archaeological digs where we have specimens dated back over 5,000 years and cultural artifacts on the upper tract. About 25% of Hartwick students surveyed by admission say that access to Pine Lake is the reason they chose our small college. That's a quarter of our population. We're a college of 1,500 students. We can't take that economic blow. The economic impact of intact forests, if you look at the ecological economists, the ecological services provide a much greater public good, a financial good, than what the financial benefits would be to the stockholders. This is through carbon sequestration, reducing erosion, ecological services, biodiversity, etc.
Less than a minute if you could.
My job is to protect the health and safety of Pine Lake students and our visitors. It's also to provide them with opportunities to study and develop their professional careers and unlock the secrets of the natural world. This pipeline is a direct threat to those students, our faculty, our institution, and our community members, and me. So tonight, I rise with my friends and oppose this project at all costs.
My name is Debbie Kroll. I'm from the town of Fulton, Schoharie County. I don't know why I did read that. I'll cut this in half, make it short for everybody else. This pipeline does not run anywhere near my property, but I pledge to resist this pipeline because I see what it means for the future of New York State. With this important decision before you, I request that you have one more FERC open house in Delaware County. Approximately 45 miles of this proposed pipeline runs through Delaware County. This is almost 1/3 the total length of the pipeline. It is unconscionable that the people of Delaware County need to drive so far to have their voices heard. The Constitution Pipeline, this FERC open house, exposes the need for people to reclaim their backyards and our energy future. Let me end in the words of Hermann Scheer, the German parliamentarian widely recognized for his nation's solar success. The rules favoring conventional energy and blocking decentralized renewable energy need to be exposed and dismantled. Through many twists and turns, my ultimate vision is of a grassroots movement for energy democracy that unites anti-fracking, community rights, clean energy, and climate change citizen activists. Such a movement will necessarily include millions of ordinary citizens who just want affordable energy that doesn't destroy anyone's backyard, schoolyard, park, or the planet. Thank you.
My name's P.J. Fleischer, F-L-E-I-S-H-E-R. I'm a geologist with over 4 decades of experience doing field work in this part of New York State. I attended a hearing, not unlike this, about 15 months ago, at which representatives of the fracking industry were present to discuss the safety of the operation and how confident they were that all of this could be done without any negative impact on the environment. During the question and answer period, I had an opportunity to ask the representative A question. It came first in the form of a piece of information. In the early 80s, when New York State decided that it was environmentally unsafe for every individual township in the state to have its own little landfill, that there would have to be centrally located landfills. And in order to guarantee that those centrally located landfills didn't contaminate the local groundwater, they would put test wells around. And the water would be tested before the landfill went into operation, and then periodically during the operation to determine if there was any impact. I asked the representative of the fracking industry why they don't do that around fracking wells. His answer was, it's too costly. This is indeed a profit margin industry. They'll do anything it takes to make the money, as demonstrated in that example I just gave you. The question was asked a little while ago. What's going to happen when we draw all of the water out to produce in the fracking procedure to allow the fracking to go on? What will the outcome of that be? Well, from a geologic perspective, I think the answer is obvious. And I would hope that in your environmental impact statement, you would insist that this point be addressed. And when you take tens of thousands of gallons of water out of a stream, the result of that is that the groundwater in the adjacent area subsides. And what happens then is the people who have wells in that area have the potential to lose the productivity from that well because the water table drops below the level of their well. There are a lot of geologic aspects that should be brought up in consideration of all of this. And I'll just mention a couple of them. The research that I've done in this area has to do primarily with the glacial geology. That tells us that the glacial geology tells us that every valley here, all of the major river valleys and their major tributaries, are underlain by primary and principal aquifers. Those terms are used by the DEC to indicate that those aquifers either currently or have the potential to be the water source for a municipality. Any contamination of the recharge areas for those aquifers would not only affect the groundwater now, but at the rate at which groundwater moves, it would affect the quality of the water for not only decades into the future, but potentially, literally, centuries into the future. Those people who don't depend on water from the primary and principal aquifers do so up the uplands. The aquifers there are completely different. Those are bedrock aquifers. Those are individual seams of saturated rock that is penetrated by a well to provide a domestic use or a need. Well, neighbors a quarter of a mile apart can have completely different geologic settings, and their aquifers can be at different depths. My point is, you contaminate the major aquifers within the valley floor, that's bad enough. But the water movement that exists in the slopes above takes advantage of natural fracture systems to recharge all of those individual aquifers that I just mentioned. And those fracture systems convey water not only to produce groundwater, but convey water from distance away. In other words, any contamination, literally miles away, can find itself to a well in an upland aquifer, and it would be almost impossible to prove that the source of contamination was miles away unless there was a test done of every well before the potential for contamination occurred, so that you knew what the source of it was when it did occur. It's the analogy back to the landfill situation. So it's incumbent upon any operation that intends to impact this much area to test the water in all of those wells to demonstrate what the water quality is prior to development. The runoff that takes place as a result of disturbing the forest, this is all well documented. This is geology 101. You remove the forest and you increase runoff. You increase runoff and you increase flood frequency. And you heard tonight from many people talking about the problems related to flood frequency that they've seen on their own property from runoff of the natural slopes as they currently exist. All of that would be exacerbated by removal of the forest for any purpose, including just leaving it open fields. And you heard about earthquake potential.
You're over 5 minutes. You could wrap it up. I'd like to get to the next people before we get kicked out.
Okay. Why don't I just end there? Thank you for your efforts, and I hope that you do due diligence to your heavy, heavy responsibilities. Thank you.
Kenna Lewandowski. I have a master's degree from Penn State in aqueous chemistry. My husband is ABD in geology. He worked western oil and gas fields, Colorado, Wyoming, Texas in the south, New Mexico. He worked all over. And he tells me that it really doesn't have to be this way when you frack. Some of the technology was developed back in the early 90s in Morgantown, West Virginia at the U.S. Department of Energy. And before that, he said when they fracked wells that they used mostly maybe some soapy water. They did not have over 300 chemicals, which if you read, it's online, Senator Waxman's report on the components added to water for hydrofracking. There are over 300 of them, and they add things like toluene, xylene, benzene, which were outlawed at Love Canal. Hooker Chemical had put that stuff in the ground. So it really doesn't have to be done that way. The reason why it's done that way is to flush things out quickly, and it all has to do with profit margins. But it really doesn't have to be that way. I think you people have shown a great deal of patience with us tonight, and I know you will consider a lot of the things that you that you heard here tonight. So I have a lot of experience with water, so I guess my concern is with the water. I was fortunate enough to be toured through fracking operation in Pennsylvania, about 15 miles north of Williamsport, and they had maybe 10 wells on top of this mountain. The technology was mind-boggling. It was truly, truly impressive, and they were trying their damnedest to do everything right. But it's almost as if the technology has surpassed human understanding. The engineer who toured us over the area told us that, they did have things like radon to deal with, they had heavy metals to deal with, and they were using the water over and over again. It was being used repeatedly, so that was their way of dealing with the quantities of water required. It was amazing to me that they were drilling like over 10,000 feet deep. Just the scope of the operations are just amazing to me. And as far as the heavy metals were concerned, he said what they did was they heated them. They heated the water afterward that contained the heavy metals, and that the residues would drop off these screens, but that ultimately these residues went into landfills. So this, again, can get into the groundwater, and the geologists here tonight have told you their concerns about what happens to the groundwater, and all I can say is Mario Cuomo better be looking for another source of drinking water for about 15 million people if he allows all these things to happen in New York State. My only experience with a pipeline was I was living in West Virginia. A pipeline blew one night about a few miles from where I lived. I had never seen anything like it. I called my husband in D.C., and I called my sister in Salt Lake City, Utah, to ask them if we were having a nuclear attack, because there were repeated explosions. It went on all night, and it melted the road. You know, it even melted the road. So it is, I know the industry has huge obstacles to deal with, and I hope that you will really, you know, exercise your consciences when you make these decisions. Thank you very much, and I hope you do a hearing in Delaware County. You know, we would like to have that.
Hi, I'm John Alashauskas. That's Alishashauskas. Farmer right now, truck driver, have an engineering degree, have a waste treatment degree in Class 4A, which is the highest you can go in New York State. I haven't maintained that to the fact that you've got to maintain a certain amount of education. And what I found out is that the education level, what they want is of a stamped, regimented education to where there's a lot of truths that you can't practice. An example, pyramid power. The Russians have built 50 new pyramids in the last few years because they do so many wonderful things like neutralize radioactive water, neutralize salt water, neutralize heavy metal water. They make a well 30% more productive. They make extinct plants start to grow. They intense the piezoelectric electric, which is the electric of human beings, that one pyramid that they built, it would take all the Russian power plants running at full bore to be equivalent to that power of one pyramid, which is a shape put in a proper position. Just in getting in that, if you go back to the information of Michael Faraday, the father of electric, back in 1820s, he said we'd be at fivefold the sunspot activity, which would create high energy, high carbonization in the atmosphere. And it did things like you could predict an earthquake because of the electrolysis that was in the ground, which again, as you burn natural gas, creates an electrical charge, or as you do things with like natural gas, they create an electrical charge in the ground. This pipeline we recognize has a charge to it. It has a mechanism that we need to address, because as they can measure this, they could predict an earthquake an hour in advance. As the pyramid also would neutralize earthquakes because it brings a harmonization, a balance to the area. It sharpens razor blades and it lets the area balance itself, and again, balance itself in the electrolysis, so it makes people healthy. Those are some things we might want to take a look at. There's information of like drilling. When we drill, if you hammer a well, a 6-inch well, the well drillers will tell you that it'll frack out 150 feet radius. If you drill it with an air drill, it fracks out 60 feet radius. If you drill it with a nuclear mechanism, it melts the dirt, pushes the dirt into the product of the perimeter, seals it so there is no cracks or no fracks, and makes a watertight seal. Now, they actually have a train system that will drill underground the size of a train so that you can make a tunnel 7 miles through solid stone in a day. And to me, we're again ignorant of this information. It's like not acknowledged to us. The people that are in there say they're fine, they're not radioactive. If we could put this tunnel underground to go under the hills and everything else and alleviate being on the surface where everybody is and impacting their properties and maybe having the ground as a source of an explosion containment, that might be something you'd want to look at. It maybe not the whole project, but portions of the project. So anyhow, they've got information like that that's out there that you could possibly look at. Again, the idea of radiation, we talk about Marcellus Shale and the danger, but yet I just heard tonight 3.5 days that the radioactivity of natural gas is cut in half, where before we're taught 4.5 billion years of half-life, and yet we have again, Marcellus Shale being said to be danger. 30 years ago, we built Route 20, in which, in Cherry Valley, we cut out a 20-mile section, 30, 50 feet high of Marcellus Shale where it comes to the surface of the ground. We've actually built a tourist center right on top of it where you go stand on it, farmers grow crops right beside it, and we don't have a glowing valley. But we also have the other side of the coin of the Petka effect. Dr. Petka said in 1955 that because of the higher radiation in the northern hemisphere, it is negatively impacting our trees. And since I've grown up, I'm 56 years old, used to cut trees down 3, 4, 5 foot in diameter down to 2 foot in diameter. That was the efficiency range. And then we've seen a change. Now at 2 foot, they start dying. So we start chopping at 2 foot now down to 12 inches sometimes because they're dying. Is that because of Dr. Petka's effect? Is that because of air pollution? I don't have a full answer for you. Is that because of Michael Faraday, the father of electric? He said there was a green ray that would be hitting us right now that would create us to have more wars and more suicides. There's lots of information out there that we're ignorant of that we can't talk about that I've brought out. Example, Code 95 is the law to keep us from having clean, free energy. There's over 5,000 patents we can't use. U.S. Title Law 50.
You're at 5 minutes. I think one more person wants
is the law
to...
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Can I just borrow back my I'm going to be very, very brief. I'm trying to find Stephen Kohlhase has a he's filed under some different FERC dockets, not on this one, and he has a theory that this is a scoping comment. He has a theory that mechanical vibrations that might be caused by, it's unknown what the source of these vibrations. It might be the compressor stations, that's his theory. It could be cavitation. It could be fluid hammer. It could be, somebody mentioned piezoelectric. There's a lot of different possibilities that's causing vibrations in these pipelines. Stephen Kohlhase is a mechanical engineer, and he has a theory that these mechanical vibrations and inherent resonant tanks that exist in these pipelines. If you think of a pipeline, it might be modeled like a big piano string. That these resonances build up and actually are a cause of weld failures over time and eventually catastrophic failures. So I would ask you, as part of your scoping things to look at, is look at the effect of these mechanical vibrations on pipeline integrity over the long term. According to the Kohlhase effect, every one of these pipelines might be subject to random catastrophic failures over time. The next thing is I wanted to concur, this isn't, I just looked up, I don't recall whether it was FERC or DOE, but I just looked up today the number of proposed applications for LNG export terminals. The number is actually right now 21. There's one that's actually been approved, the Sabine Pass, and there's 20 other export terminals. So the phrase local gas for local people, or anyway, that's all kind of like, I think it's rubbish. The last thing I want to say is this: FERC issues permits, right? FERC issues permits. So my question to you is, do you have enforcement authority? I would think that you do, because otherwise your permits wouldn't be worth anything. So if you have enforcement authority, I've brought for you today, I've been walking around with it. This is Williams Central Station. If you look at the maps, it lines up perfectly with the beginning of the Constitution pipeline. When we ask these people if this is the start of the Constitution, sometimes they say yes, sometimes they're honest, sometimes they say no. It's like watching a tennis game, back and forth, yes, no, yes, no. They answer randomly. But it's pretty clear to say that the application that they submitted to you, pre-file PF 12-9, is a defective application because there was no initial compressor. This is the initial compressor. Does this look like it's in pre-file? Looks to me like they've pretty much built it out already, despite the fact that FERC has not issued a permit. This is part of a big interstate transmission line. The permits that they have existing are PA, DEP, GP5 permits that are not appropriate. This is according to Pennsylvania law, not appropriate for interstate gas pipeline projects. We have here an illegal, unpermitted facility. So my question to you is, if you have enforcement powers, which I think you should because you issue permits, what what is the level of abuse before you take an enforcement action. So please consider this, take this back to the commissioners that I am asking for. I am petitioning for an enforcement action against Williams Cabot to shut down and cease and desist the Williams Central Station. It is an illegal facility. Thank you.
Robert Curley, K-E-R-L-E-Y. I'm a resident of Schoharie County, New York. Yeah, I think most of my comments were covered tonight, and had a couple of other FERC hearings I attended. I would like to say that I think that there should be a hearing, an additional FERC scoping hearing in Delaware County, New York. Apparently there's not been a hearing there yet. I would just further say I'm opposed to reiterate that I'm opposed to the pipeline, and I'm hoping that Williams Cabot and their Constitution Pipeline entity will withdraw their intent for this application, and if that does not occur, that given that the pipeline is not necessary, that FERC will deny the request. I think that would be a good thing. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's it. We don't have time for anyone else. I really do appreciate